3, 2, 1, roll the footage. Welcome back to the Strategy Sprints podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Severino, and today is a special day. My guest is one of the most expensive business strategists in the world. He is endorsed in Forbes, Inc. magazine, and has authored 8 books. At London's Royal Society, he announced the world's largest science research challenge, the 10 million Evolution 2.0 prize. His reinvention of the Pareto principle is published in Harvard Business Review, and his Google book laid the foundations for the 100 billion pay-per-click industry. He has a degree in engineering, lives with his family in Chicago. Welcome, everybody, Perry Marshall.
Hi, Seaman. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So cool to have you here. This book here, everybody, if you don't have it, the 80-20 of Sales and Marketing, this is still the best book on sales, on marketing, on how to find the few things that move the needle forward. And it has been a foundation to our business and to our success, absolutely. So we will dive into that. But before, one of your concepts is the Renaissance time. Yes. So I'm curious, how did you start your day today?
I started my day, I got out and I went and I got a cup of tea and a notebook and I started writing. And this is how I start every day. And when I say writing, I don't mean what you might think I mean. I don't mean pushing the pen and telling somebody a story or, writing a blog post or anything like that. What I mean is whatever is like naturally coming, gratitude, I got a question, looking for some help from the muse, talking to the head office, like just what is flowing. And what most people do, most people, they wake up, they pull a device into their bed and they start the death scroll, as I like to call it. Okay, and that is, you have immediately murdered your day when you start your day that way. If you're starting your day reacting to people, watching the news, checking email, doing anything like that, you're doing it wrong. The right way is in your own spiritual space. This is the most important habit I've ever cultivated, and I have not missed a day in 7.5 years. And this is like, if you look what I'm doing and all the different things I'm involved in, I mean, we could get into a list if you want. The only way that I could do so much, could accomplish so much, get so much done, is by starting with that space, because that feeds the creativity engine. That is what feeds the spirit, because most people are running on fumes. And so I call that Renaissance time. And well, I've actually convinced a lot of people to do this. And people tell me it's one of the best things in their life. So Renaissance time.
It is, and as simple as it is, and everybody can do it, instead of starting with your phone in the morning or your computer, start with what Perry has just laid out. And Perry is the data point. He is the validation that if you do this, you can be 10 years ahead, 15 years ahead of your industry, because you have the mental space to think forward, to see what is there, but other people are not seeing because they are busy answering emails.
Right, exactly.
Now, I'm curious, one day in the life of Perry Marshall 2021, what's a typical day?
So, let's take today, or this week. So I do Renaissance time for an hour, sometimes more. And that's probably too much for most people at first. It's kind of like, you probably got a friend, he runs 2 miles every day. Well, he didn't start by running 2 miles. He probably started by running 2 blocks, right? But I do that. And then the first few hours of my day is reserved for whatever is the most important long-term creative project that is not like immediately like reacting to stuff, but like what is really going to move the needle. Or it's almost like if you're going to do one thing and accomplish it and it would justify you taking the rest of the day off, what would that one thing be? And that's what most of my morning is spent on that. And there's no phone calls and there's no emails and all of that. Then at 11:30, I call my personal assistant who is in charge of my email box, and we talk through my email box. And that's how I do email. In fact, I usually do email with a Bluetooth headset on my bike, riding on the bike trail, talking to my personal assistant. And so I can usually ride 10 or 20 miles in the time it takes to go through the email box. That's like 45 minutes to an hour and a half. I'd say most days we have it under an hour. And then we get the email box knocked off, and she's like taking care of the little like gnat bites and things that, you know, most people like dickering back and forth about what time we're going to have some meetings. She does all that. And a personal assistant is priceless. In fact, I think basically everybody who makes more than $60,000 a year should have a personal assistant, even if you're an employee paying them out of your own pocket. And, you know, even if all you could afford is somebody from the Philippines, you have no idea how much it will increase your productivity. And probably they shouldn't be from the Philippines. Probably they should be your country, your language, everything. There are lots and lots and lots of people who want work for $15 an hour or $20 an hour. And then the afternoon is like what most people consider productivity stuff, like talking to clients and having meetings and, you know, working on projects and all of that. And so I really turned everything upside down and backwards from what most people would think. Like most people would think, oh, well, I got to start by putting out all the fires. I get all this stuff. And then maybe in the afternoon, I might get to my longer term stuff. And then, you know, maybe after that, maybe I'll get in a little time to think and reflect. Of course, that never happens because it all gets, so I just flip all of that upside down, and that's a day in the life. And then I go have dinner and hang with my family after that.
I love this
symphony with my 16-year-old on the stereo. There's no symphonies during COVID, but you know, like he's into violin, so that's a day.
I love this, and I never thought you have inspired me again. I never thought of combining it with exercise, which of course is possible. Anything cardio, anything that you can do while talking, beautiful. 1 hour in nature and going through this admin stuff, tier 1 stuff, beautiful.
Yes, it works great, and it keeps me in shape, and it feels good. And there's a bike trail 2 miles away, so it's perfect.
Now let's go to the 80-20 rule. But first, one word from our sponsors.
Hey, if you love what you are hearing, you will love our free masterclasses. Go grab them at strategysprints.com.
Most people know the concept of 80-20, still they don't know how to live it. And you are the man, even if you didn't invent it, but you are the person who has shown the world how to live it, how to do it every day. It's a mindset, it's a practice. Can you share with us how you live it? Well,
so most people think that 80-20 is just this thing about, you know, oh yeah, this Italian economist 100 years ago, 20% of the people own 80% of the real estate and 20% of the people have 80% of the wealth. And they think it's just that. Well, no, actually, it's almost like a law of physics or gravity. It's everywhere. It's inviolable. You have to work with it. You can't, and it is in every spreadsheet. It's in every advertising account. It's in your family. It's in your house. It's in your checking account. And what it says is that 80% of results come from 20% of efforts. And the other 20% of results comes from 80% of efforts. And this is always true. But once you become conscious of it, you can start moving your efforts into more and more and more productive regions and getting more and more leverage out of everything you do by eliminating. You have to eliminate. Now, eliminate does not hardly ever mean erase, because you can't erase 80% of the world, and you can't erase 80%. It's not possible. But you can choose what not to do, and you can choose what to say no to, and you can choose what to delegate. Now, it's doubly powerful because 20% of the 20% produces 80% of the 80%. So there are 80-20 levers inside 80-20 levers. And so so think back to last year. Now, I don't know you, Simone, but I'm going to guess that if you analyze 2020 and you look at all of your income sources, like, okay, where did my income actually come from? My clients, my product sales, and everything like that. Half of your actual money and profit came from 1 week of work that you did last year, not a year of work. And it might have been a Tuesday afternoon in April. It might have been a really productive day in August. It might be a deal you closed on September 19, and scattered around. But actually, there's these super hot spots of productivity that were in very specific places. And most of the rest of the year was actually filler. And this is even true of a dental receptionist, except that because she makes $15 an hour and thinks about her time that way, she just never really realizes it. But the truth is that there's $10 an hour work, there's $100 an hour work, there's $1,000 an hour, and there's $10,000 an hour work. And even a dental assistant. Okay, so let's say Helen is answering the phone at a dental office. And she says, "Woodlake Dental, please hold," and put somebody on hold. And then 2 minutes later, "This is Helen, how can I help you?" And the person has left. Well, they were going to spend $5,000, but in 2 minutes of hold music, she lost them. So the practice lost $5,000 of revenue in 2 minutes, which is $150,000 an hour. Okay, a $15 an hour receptionist lost $150,000 an hour for 2 minutes. You could never tell me that people don't make $10,000 an hour. They do for little periods of time. But if you treat everything equal, if you're casual, most of the time, I don't care if Helen's on Facebook. But when that phone rings, it is time for everybody to move. And if they don't, how much money do they spend making that phone ring? And it all goes to waste. And so if it's true of a $15 an hour dental assistant, what about an entrepreneur or CEO? What are you missing?
We have a practice in our team that is probably exactly the 80-20. So today, once a week, we go through all the emails. So we send automated emails, we collect the data, and then every 7 days, we go through the losers, we call them, and we just delete them. So it's around 10% of the emails that we have sent in these 7 days. By click rate and by open rate, there are some that just don't win. They resonate less with our audience, and we delete them. Another thing is the number of projects that we have and activities that we have going on. We go through the list, we eliminate the less impactful. Is that one way that teams can apply the 80-20 rule?
Yes. In fact, a lot of people will have a difficulty going, I can't possibly imagine how I would get rid of 80% of my stuff. Okay, Perry, in theory, I suppose I sort of kind of believe you. Okay, here's what you can do. You can almost always get rid of 10% of almost anything or 5% of almost anything, right? Like, so you're talking about email campaigns or advertising especially with that kind of stuff. Easily 10% not only performs poorly, it actually is pushing you backwards. There's probably 5% of your emails that are causing people to not buy or make you look stupid or move things backwards instead of forwards, or, oh my goodness, this has been in the system for 6 years and this has nothing to do with anything in the morning. Why are we spamming people with that, right? And so it's always the case that there's 5 or 10 or maybe 20% that can just be eliminated. And as soon as you do that, everything gets better, just because you've cleaned up a mess.
Another thing that I love to talk about is your marketing DNA principle,
Yes.
which says, hey, there are many different styles of very successful salespeople, and it really just depends on finding your style, so knowing who you are, and then doubling down on that. I did myself the marketing DNA test, and I was really touched by how precise it described my style, which is the live impro closer. Absolutely, yeah. And so, would you like to tell the audience about that?
Well, yes. When my wife was 3 months pregnant with our first child, I was an engineer and I got laid off from my engineering job, and I went into sales. And little did I know that I was in for 2 years of bologna sandwiches and ramen soup and spiraling credit card debt and chasing people around. And boy, I learned a lot of stuff, but I learned it the hard way. And I think most everybody who's ever gone into sales has had this kind of experience. And well, eventually I figured out how to do sales and marketing. And after 20 years of working with people and seeing every kind of sales and marketing person you can possibly imagine, I realized that there are totally different types of salespeople. There are totally different types of marketers. There isn't any such thing as the ideal salesperson or the ideal marketer. It doesn't exist. It would drive us crazy if it did. So, for example, there are people that I call hostage negotiators, and you might be one, okay? And a hostage negotiator is a guy who, like, walks in to some crazy situation, says whatever somebody needs to hear, and he gets the deal, and he walks out with the hostages, and somebody goes, so what did you say anyway? And he's like, I don't know. Okay. But he's just in the moment, and it was amazing, right? And then there's like other people, and they're introverts, and they hide in their cave, and they'll like cook up, hours of video or 100 emails or sales copy or whatever. And, finally when it's all ready, they'll push a button and they'll press the send button, and a whole Rube Goldberg machine will like start cranking away, and all this money will show up, right? And the hostage negotiator and the introvert hiding in his cave are completely, utterly different animals. And what I noticed was I could name hostage negotiator after hostage negotiator who went to marketing seminars. He's like, oh, I need to be a copywriter, right? And I would meet, introvert hiding in his cave, after another who is like, they're trying to do live webinars or negotiate, close sales deals or something like that, and everybody's like beating themselves up because they can't manage to like do this other thing. And And so I created the marketing DNA test because I really felt that I had identified the core fundamental elements of what makes sales and marketing people tick. And if we could measure those, and like I've gotten extraordinary raves about the marketing DNA test. Like I had a computer programmer, he took the test and it said, well, your inclinations are all that you could be a professional copywriter. And 18 months later, he broke the 6-figure barrier as a freelance professional copywriter, no longer working as a software engineer. His name is Josh Earl. And there's been a lot of those. And here's the thing. If you can figure out your marketing DNA, like this is how I persuade, this is how I market, this is how I sell. And also, these are the ways I do not. You will stop putting yourself in positions where you're going to lose. And you'll automatically be in a position where you'll win. And not only that, but when you take more training courses or you go to seminars, it has you going to the right ones, learning the right things. Because if you're already a good writer, investing $10,000 in your writing ability will probably pay off 100x. Whereas, if you're trying to make yourself a hostage negotiator and you're not, you'll probably end up, going splat, which is very painful. So that's why we created the marketing DNA test. And you must know who you are. You must know thyself. It is the most liberating thing. And you can stop. There's stuff you can stop doing, which of course that's 80-20.
Absolutely. And so I did it. It was such a precise email that I got, or a series of emails that were describing my pattern, describing strengths and weaknesses. And I was like, yes, this is really good. The world needs to do this. Do it with your teams, people. Perry Marshall, Marketing DNA. If you buy the book here, there is a code where you can even do it for free, I think.
Yes, instead of paying $37. So yeah, it's in the 80-20 book, right?
It can save you so much stress and time, and you can divide work better in your team, and knowing who's writing stuff and who's closing stuff, who is
right.
setting up and who is closing, right? So what are the types that come out of that?
Well, so there's 8 components to it. So there's the alchemist, and the alchemist is the person who it's all about. It's new, it's innovative, you've never seen it before. They have a drive for novelty. Okay. Then there's a producer, and a producer is selling you certainty and specifications and conforming to best standards and reliability. And an alchemist and a producer in some sense are opposite. A producer is a person who wants to get their marketing message all dialed in before they press send. Okay. And they want to follow it. Okay. So then you have live and recorded. And live means that you're in the moment, and that you are your best self when you're on the firing line under pressure. And recorded means you are a person who needs time to put it together and get it right, and you like to meticulously, adjust things until they're just perfectly dialed in. Then you have images and words. There are people who sell with pictures, like literal pictures and demonstrations and things like that. And there are people who sell with stories. Okay, and those can be completely different. And then you have people who sell with empathy, and you have people who sell with analysis. And again, those are 2 completely different people. So if you take these 8 things, most people have 2 or 3 that they're really strong on, and a couple they really don't like. Okay, and when you figure that out, it's like a vector, and it points you in a certain direction. It's like, okay, so if I avoid a couple of these areas, and I always make sure that I'm selling in this or this or this kind of situation, you are immediately 10 to 20 times as effective with every minute that you spend doing sales and marketing. And you're less frustrated and you're more happy.
8 elements, people. Alchemist, producer, live recorded images, words, empathy, analysis. And the slightest difference there makes a whole lot of difference of how you divide the work in your team. And if you are just actually winning because it's your true nature, or if you're just struggling because it's not your thing and you should delegate, outsource it.
I wish that I'd had this 20 years ago, because it would have told me not to take that job. Like, I'm an alchemist. If you're an alchemist, the worst thing you can ever do is try to sell some kind of commodity. It will drive you crazy. And you'll feel like, oh, I'm just bugging with these people. Like, they don't even, there's no even really good reason for them to talk to me, because I just have my suitcase full of samples and it's the same samples the next guy up the street is showing them. Well, I needed to be selling things that are totally unique. Now, some people have a very hard time selling things that are totally unique. You know, they just want to, like, check the boxes, right? And so if you can save yourself from one bad job or one bad career, my goodness, it's like giving you back 2 years of your life.
Absolutely. How do you write books as an alchemist? Because do you talk books and then other people transcribe it who are producers?
Well, okay. Alchemist is different than live. Okay, so a live person would probably have a hard time writing a book. Now, if a live person wants to write a book, you record them, and then you give the transcript to an editor, and that works great. Now, an alchemist is simply somebody who's into new ideas. So I'm an alchemist. What did I do? I took Pareto's idea and I said, hey, wait a minute. This is not just a law of economics. This is like a law of everything. And it's fractal. And nobody's explaining that. So I'm going to explain both of these things. And I'm going to explain it to marketers. And I'm going to create something totally different that's never existed, which is exactly what I did. And so, like, alchemy just kind of comes out of me. Like, I'm like one of your friends who's a musician that's just constantly cranking out songs. Like, he can't stop himself from generating songs. Well, if your friend can't stop himself from writing songs, he should not be playing in a bar singing Jimmy Buffett songs every night. It would drive him to an early grave. He's got to find some way. Maybe it's open mic night at a different bar, but he needs to find a way where people are going to hear his new songs.
Beautiful. And I'm super curious because now you have had so many books and so much success worldwide. You could easily just do your bike rides every day, and with 2 hours, you can run your global business easily. It probably runs itself. Still, you work so much. And not just in business, but you are in the field of philosophy, of social innovation, of deep intelligence, solving the big problems of the world, understanding evolution and biology. Mm-hmm. What are your next big goals?
Well, we just started a 501c3 nonprofit foundation for funding cancer research that the standard sources and funding authorities won't fund. For example, there's a researcher named Azra Raza who I became friends with a year ago. She and her colleagues have, looks like, figured out how to detect cancer at stage -1. Now, stage 3 and 4 cancer, we are no better off now than we were 50 years ago, basically. Your chances in stage 4 are no better now than they were in 1930, despite the fact that the US government spent $250 billion. About a year ago, I got pulled into a group of people, And I came to understand that a major reason why this failure has occurred is because the entire cancer industry has misunderstood evolution. And over my shoulder here, there's a book, Evolution 2.0, which talks about, well, the evolution industry has screwed up evolution. And so with a different model of evolution, you can actually understand cancer much better. And so, like, backing up a step, one of the reasons that I became an entrepreneur was I knew what I really want to do is work on the most interesting, most important, most pressing problems in the world. I do not want to be just some guy in a hamster wheel, like cashing my check and having my health insurance. If I'm 45 years old and I wake up and that's what I'm doing, I'm going to be miserable. And so the reason I'm an entrepreneur is so that I can go do stuff like this. And I'm doing what I want, and I like my business, and I love my community. And in fact, the entrepreneurial community is becoming a very important resource for solving these problems in the medical industry, because we don't think like they do. The medical industry is a mess, and it desperately needs entrepreneurial thinking at every level. And so my entrepreneur community is becoming a very powerful resource. Like the CEO of Science Research 2.0, which is our organization, one of my clients, and he came on board. It's like, hey man, like let's cure cancer. And so I think these questions are fascinating, and they also affect people. Like my dad died of cancer when I was 17. My best friend died of cancer when he was 71, 9 years ago. I've got people all around me who I've lost, and I believe that this is solvable, but we're never going to solve it using the old assumptions. And so we need to bring entrepreneurship into science, and that's what I'm doing.
Beautiful. One other thing that I find fascinating about you, because I studied philosophy, so I am really into the Pre-Gutenberg category of books, and you are the guy who says, "Hey, read the evergreen books." Mm-hmm. So I am super curious. What are your 3 favorite Pre-Gutenberg books?
Well, so one of them is absolutely the Bible, and if you're not familiar with the Bible, start with the book of Proverbs. That is probably, I think it's the best business book ever written. The Proverbs of Solomon. It's right in the middle of the Bible. It's 31 chapters, and it's perfect for, like, you read a chapter a day. It would take you about 5 minutes, and then meditate on it. It will save your bacon from so many stupidity spasms. Some other books that I like Seneca. He's a Greek philosopher who lived the 1st century. Absolutely brilliant. I like the Catholic Apocrypha, which are the books in the Catholic Bible that aren't in the Protestant Bible. There's some really interesting stuff in there. And I think you should read something written before Gutenberg every day. In fact, on my website, I've got a huge list. You can go look around. If you go to perrymarshall.com and you type Gutenberg, you'll find this blog post. Why is this so important and valuable? Because the world is insanely addicted to what is new. And G.K. Chesterton said something brilliant. He said, news is old things happening to new people. And if you read ancient literature, you will develop a very clear sense of what is permanent and what is not. And most of your life needs to be oriented towards things that are permanent, because the issues of life have not changed one bit in 5,000 years. Human beings are struggling with the same problems. If you think just because you have an iPhone makes you have different problems than the ancient Greeks, you're on drugs. You're on a drug called an iPhone that makes you think, it's not true. Okay. And I think business people who read and think pre-Gutenberg are much better grounded. They are much less likely to jump into stupid things, to do businesses that are just like little flash in the pan fads. I have this saying, the center is the edge. The closer you are to getting the core principles exactly right, the better you can innovate and solve problems at the outer edge of your abilities.
Thank you so much. You have again brought a ton of wisdom and inspiration. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you?
Well, I just want to give people some encouragement. I think that, we're on the tail end of this pandemic, and, I can't tell you the exact details of kind of how it's going to, play out in the next few months. But I believe that during the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to have a big economic boom. We are not headed into some giant recession. And now that depends a little bit on what industries you're in and so forth. But I think people need to engineer their future with the assumption that there's a boom coming and the bust is 3 to 5 years out from where we are now. It's not now. What we're coming out of is analogous to the dot-com crash, which was about 18 or 19 years ago. And what happened after the dot-com crash? Well, all of the real progress of the internet started to actually happen. That's when Google ads came out. That's when Facebook really picked up steam. That's when, and then by the time you got to about 2010 or 2012, it was like full steam ahead, and the internet had just become this whole other thing. And you have to remember how negative and pessimistic things looked at 2002, 2003. It looked like not much was going on, but actually there was a ton going on. And so we're heading into a phase like that in the post-COVID era.
Thank you so much. Where can people learn more from you except perrymarshall.com?
Well, go to perrymarshall.com, scroll down and find the 30-day Street MBA and sign up. And it'll punch you in the face from the very first email, and it'll shake you up. And I guess, if you don't like it, you'll know it right away. Most people are really intrigued, and you can find out how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Thank you so much, Perry. Perry Marshall, everybody, if you don't have this book, go and grab it right now, perrymarshall.com. And thank you for being on the show, sharing your wisdom, pre-Gutenberg, post-Gutenberg, and business, philosophy, evolution with us. Thank you so much. Please come back soon.
Thank you, Simone. Take care.
Avoid trying to do thousands of things that doesn't work. We have 274 templates for your business success. Reach your ambitious goals with one-on-one sprint coach. We double your revenue in 90 days.